everyone, and welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman. I'm Julie Hartman, and it is great, as always, to be with you. In addition to this show, Timeless, I encourage you to check out my show with Dennis Prager, aptly named Dennis and Julie, which is every Sunday on this channel at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. You know, speaking of Dennis, a few weeks ago, I was guest hosting for Dennis's radio show. In addition to co-hosting Dennis and Julie, the guy has a big radio show, which you probably already know, and I sometimes sit in for him. And I recently, when I was guest hosting, welcomed Glen Loury onto the program. He's a professor of economics at Brown University. He is a public intellectual and specifically extremely important in the Black conservatism movement here in the United States. And we had a fantastic conversation about his recently released memoir called Late Admissions. I wanted to show it to you. So here's the interview from a few weeks ago. I hope that you will enjoy it and let me know what you think. You can write into me at julie@julie-hartman.com. What we discuss is so relevant to our country, and it's just great personal advice as well. Enjoy. Here it is. Recently, Professor Loury has released a memoir about his life called Late Admissions: Confessions of a Black Conservative. Professor Loury is an economist. I'm reading here from his Amazon bio because I am so intent on citing my sources whenever I read anything, lest I be like the president of my alma mater, or the former president of my alma mater, Claudine Gay, who got into some trouble for not citing her sources. But Professor Loury grew up on the south side of Chicago. Again, reading from the Amazon bio. He earned a PhD in MIT's economics program and became the first Black tenured professor of economics at Harvard University at the age of 33. He has been a young father, a drug addict, an adulterer, a psychiatric patient, a born-again Christian, a lapsed born-again Christian, a Black Reaganite who swung from the right to the left and back again. And I'm so happy to welcome him on right now to talk about his memoir. Professor Loury, very nice to meet you live on the radio.
Oh, thank you very much. It's good to be with you.
So tell us, what is something that all of us should know about your journey? I can imagine that you did not grow up conservative. It is something that you came to later in life. What was that thing that made you become conservative at a time when it was really difficult for Black individuals, especially, to be conservative?
Well, you know, Julie, I haven't always been conservative. And I think there's a number of dimensions to my conservatism. It did not happen all at the same time. So I'm an economist. I was trained at MIT in the 1970s. And although most of my teachers would have been called liberals, they did believe in the market. They believed in capitalism, in profit, prices, self-interest, pursuit of, open society. And I became what you might call a neoliberal. I mean, a person who thinks globalization is not a bad thing, who thinks profit is not the worst thing in the world, and corporations are not all evil conspiracies against the public interest, this kind of thing, who appreciates that our prosperity and wealth and bounty are the fruit of industry and innovation and risk-taking, and so, this kind of conservatism. Call it a kind of libertarian or free market dimension. But the other thing, you said Christian, lapsed Christian. Yes, my religious journey is complicated, but it begins with me confessing Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and with me being for years and years a member of a relatively theologically conservative Protestant congregation in Boston. You were talking about how you weren't always conservative, but there were certain things that helped you change. And I think a lot of people, I know I can relate to that change. So please do tell us more about what it was that made you shift. Oh, glad to do that. No problem with the interruption. No, I was saying I'm an economist and I believe in free markets and open trade, and I think that capitalism is the source of our prosperity and our security in the modern world. That makes me conservative. I was saying I was a born again Christian, and although I'm not as religious as I used to be, I still have great respect and knowledge of and a feeling for the quest for a relationship with the creator of the universe and the values that comes out of that tradition. But thirdly, I'm a black guy who thinks for African Americans that the victim stance and the, reparations shtick and the systemic racism excuse just won't work anymore in the 21st century. That's something from another time, and that with the world moving as fast as it is and with the country being such a great and open society, that the real challenge to black people is one of developing our potential to take advantage of the opportunities that exist. Now, it's not a knee on the neck or a kind of holding us back. It's that the ball is in our court, and it's time for us to man up and woman up and seize the opportunities. So that makes me kind of black conservative too, the self-help as opposed to victim stance that I would like to advocate.
I look at people like you, Professor Loury, and people like Tom Sowell and Larry Elder and Clarence Thomas. And I know how difficult it was for me when I was at Harvard, coming out of the closet, if you will, with my conservatism. I got a lot of flack. But nothing that I went through compares to what those aforementioned individuals and what I imagine you went through as a black person becoming conservative. I mean, we heard recently, or I guess 4 years ago, it's not so recently, but 4 years ago, President Biden saying, well, if you don't vote Democrat, you ain't black. That's the level of left-wing racism against black conservatives that we have now. How racist to say that if you don't think the way that I do, then you're not truly black. I want to ask you if, I mentioned the former president of my alma mater, Claudine Gay, who was fired, as you know, for plagiarism. If you could give Claudine Gay 100% effective truth serum, and asked her, do you really think DEI is all that great? What do you think she would say? What do you think she really believes? Does she really believe in DEI? Does she really believe that black conservatives are traitors? How do you think she'd answer that?
Yeah, I get the question. I get why you asked the question. And I have no way of knowing what Claudine Gay would say, but I would guess. I'd guess she's a true believer. I'd guess that she doubled down. I think that's part of the tragedy of the thing. I read her piece in the New York Times after she had had to step down as a consequence of the plagiarism thing. And I don't think it acknowledged the reality of the situation at all. So I think two things. I think they really believe it. But I think the jig is up on DEI. I think the clock is just ticking. And I think let's take former president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, who did lift some quotations without appropriate attribution in a few instances. And I'm not excusing that. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. But if she had been a more substantial scholar with a body of work that you could point to and say it was excellent without any question, who had made a contribution to her field that resonated, that had people writing dissertations about it, that had books quoting and citing and so forth. If she had been Larry Summers, I think she would have survived the plagiarism thing without any difficulty. I don't think they wanted to fire her. Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying her mediocrity was at the root of the matter. Her intellectual mediocrity was at the root of the matter. And that is what is going to expose DEI for the fraud that it is. I mean, there's no substitute for actually knowing the answer to the question, for being able to solve the equation, for getting the patent on the new idea, for pushing the frontier of human knowledge forward. That's what universities are for. And I think to the extent that DEI doesn't foster that, it doesn't have long-term good prospects. It's vulnerable. It's constantly vulnerable to being undermined, as we've seen it being done of late with the the Israeli Gaza war and all of the fallout from that.
How were you treated, Professor Loury, throughout your career? I also want to shout out another pioneer in Black conservatism, Dr. Carol Swain, who I was honored to interview on this show in the wake, actually, of the Claudine Gay scandal. But throughout your long career, and as we have said, you worked at Harvard, you got your PhD at MIT. I believe you're now at Brown University. How were you treated by your colleagues, white and Black, as a Black conservative?
It wasn't one thing. It wasn't all bad. I mean, I've been tolerated.
Good.
I've had people who admire me because they respect my intellect, or they admire my courage and my integrity of having a position and sticking to it, who are going to allow me to be eccentric. They're going to tolerate me being a little bit different. But I've also met with hostility, and I've met with indifference, and I'm not sure which is worse. I've met with people who called me, in effect, Uncle Tom, who've told students don't take my classes because, I'm a sellout, pathetic Black mascot of the right. That's what one of my colleagues called me at one point along the way. And that stings. I've had family members, uncle, my mother's brother, whom I loved, tell me at one point, son, we could only send one from the South Side up to Harvard and MIT. We sent you, and we don't see us in anything you do. He wanted me to be a radical. He wanted me to be one of these balled up fist types. And, that wasn't where I was coming from. Not temperamentally, not intellectually, not politically, not morally. That wasn't where I was coming from. And I had to acknowledge to myself, you can't go home again. And that's my advice, actually, to people. And I'm so glad you mentioned Carol Swain, because she is someone who, as a significant scholar of African-American voting behavior, has got the chops. But you have to just stick to your guns and, as the Christians would say, go where the Lord leads you.
You have here on the Amazon bio, which I cited, it was important for me to cite, that was quite a list there of sort of the scope of your life. Again, reading that it says here on Amazon, he has been, at turns, a young father, a drug addict, an adulterer, a psychiatric patient, a born-again Christian, a lapsed born-again Christian. You're very open about many of the trials and tribulations you've been through in your life. What was it that brought you out of the depths, for instance, of drug addiction, or out of the adultery and into a healthier, better life that you have now? I'm sure you write about this in your memoir, but I'd like for you to tell us a bit what that change involved.
I do write about it. I was lucky. I had the love of a good woman who stuck with me through thick and thin and supported me. I came to a relationship with a Christian community that nurtured me and encouraged me and gave me a foundation. I spent 2 months in the McLean Psychiatric Hospital in a drug recovery unit because I was a crack cocaine addict in the 1980s.
Before we continue, I want to tell you about two things that you should consider. The first is buying gold. Economists warn that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and 401k account as the stock market braces for impact. With inflation and the rise of global uncertainty looming, it's clear why central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. If you haven't had your eye on gold, maybe it's time to make it a priority. I'm Julie Hartman, and I urge you to consider Priority Gold. Call them to find out how they can help you diversify your savings with physical gold and silver. Call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit prioritygold.com/golden for a free gold information guide. Plus, see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree that physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings by tying your money to something tangible, no matter the economic climate. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist or visit prioritygold.com/golden to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD. Another thing you should consider is investing in products that will make your life better. A better pillow to sleep on, better slippers to walk on, better towels to dry off on. You should consider MyPillow products. Right now, MyPillow is having a massive sale on almost all of their products. They're calling it the $25 extravaganza, and it's just what it sounds like. You can get 2-pack multi-use MyPillows for just $25. MyPillow sandals, just $25. 6-pack towel sets, just $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels for, you guessed it, just $25. And for the first time ever, the premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, just $25. Orders over $75 will receive free shipping, and this offer won't last long, so go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman or call 1-800-566-6745 today and use the promo code Hartman. Now back to the interview.
The grace of God, I think, would be the way the Christians would put it, and I think they have a point. I was extolling the faithfulness and love of my wife, Linda, my late wife, who died in 2011 from breast cancer, but who was with me in those, in those years in the 1980s when I was not faithful to her. God, forgive me. And when she nevertheless stuck it out and saw me through to the other side, we joined a wonderful Christian congregation together in the late 1980s, and our children were born into that church. Children, Glen and Nehemiah, who are now in their 30s, our 2 sons. But she was definitely a part of my recovery. I was acknowledging that I spent time in a psychiatric hospital trying to overcome cocaine addiction, and that was a struggle for me that involved me wandering around the streets of Boston and putting myself in impossible situations, getting robbed at gunpoint, going into crack houses and housing projects and unsavory neighborhoods and such. This was a very dark corner of my life, but I was able to pull through. I spent time in a halfway house in Irish Boston, run by a grizzled old former drunk and Boston cop who had turned his life to saving other men. And Bob Brown was his name. I write about that in the book. I went through the valley of the shadow of death.
Wow.
And I came out the other side.
I so appreciate, Professor Loury, your openness and your bravery to talk about these parts of your life. You know, Dennis and I on our show, Dennis and Julie, we often share parts of our lives too, and especially Dennis really does. And by being honest, even with those moments which we may find to be incredibly painful, embarrassing, things in our life that we probably just want to shove in the corner and move away from, by bringing it out into the light, it really does help people. And I just very much admire that you're willing to do that in your memoir, which, as I told you during the break, I'm so excited to read. And from what you have said, it really sounds riveting and very wise. In our final moments together, I'd like to ask you, according to a recent New York Times Siena poll, President Donald Trump is gaining a lot of support among Black Americans. He went from about 3% in 2020 to right now he's polling, according to the New York Times, if you can believe it, the New York Times, he's polling at 23%. And President Biden is actually losing some support. He's went from about 92% to, I believe, the high 60s right now. So that's pretty fantastic for former President Donald Trump. What do you make of that? You grew up on the South Side of Chicago. What do you think many Black Americans living in the South Side of Chicago, what do you think they think about President Obama and Michelle Obama right now? And what do you think they think about President Trump?
Yeah, again, I don't know. I don't know what they think, but I can speculate. Mm-hmm. I think the Trump thing is interesting because you're supposed to hate Trump because he's a white supremacist or he has the support of white supremacists and he's a racist and Central Park 5 and all of that. But in fact, Trump can actually speak directly to people, and working class people and ordinary people. He's very effective at doing that. And let's face it, he is being run out of town on the rail right now. I mean, he's the victim of a certain kind of persecution. Anybody can see that. So that's one thing. Trump can talk too. He can go to the UFC, or he can go to the South Bronx, or he can go. I mean, I'll bet there's not any place that he couldn't go and be able to, engage with people meet them where they are. I don't think you can say the same thing for Joseph Biden. The other thing is Biden talks down to Black people. I mean, does he think we're all fools? Does he think we're all hiding or afraid that a racist cop or a hooded Ku Klux Klansman is going to come and get us, and that we need Joseph Robinette Biden to protect us from white supremacy? So I think that worked 30 years ago, but I think it's, and as far as Michelle and Barack Obama are concerned, again, I don't know what people think. Here's what they might think: they used us, they played us. They sold America a dog and pony show. He was a carpetbagger. He had as much to do with authentic Blackness off the South Side of Chicago as the average white guy would have to do with it. I mean, and they're going to build a library over us, not with us. And they're going to float off into billionaire land and do Netflix specials. And it has about as much to do with the struggles of Black people, has nothing to do with it whatsoever. That's what I think they could think. That's what I think, should think.
That's right. Well, they'll be doing the Netflix specials with Harry and Meghan. Other, fantastic advocates for the underdog, right? It's just beyond belief, the role models we have right now. Professor Loury, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a great honor to speak with you, and I encourage everyone to order Professor Loury's memoir, Late Admissions: Confessions of a Black Conservative. Thank you so much for all that you've done for conservatism and, of course, in turn, for America.
My pleasure.
Economists warn that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and 401k account as the stock market braces for impact. With inflation and the rise of global uncertainty looming, it's clear why central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. It's important to tie your money to something tangible. And right now, I urge you to consider Priority Gold. You can call them and they'll help you find out how they can help you diversify your savings with physical gold and silver. You can call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit PriorityGold.com/golden for a free gold information guide. Plus, see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist or visit PriorityGold.com/golden to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please do email me at julie@julie-hartman.com with any and all of your thoughts. And take care. I'll see you soon.